Part 33. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 324. Garen stood in front of the morning tower in the inner city, wearing a golden 9-flower on his body. Standing alone among a row of men in black, Garen looked inconspicuous. All the people in front and behind him lined up in a straight line and stepped forward to pay tribute to the Grand Duke's body. The man with flowers walked away silently and stood aside. The people behind followed silently. Everyone in this spacious morning hall actually had a tacit understanding and no one made a sound. In the grey-white hall, on the side of the Pyramid Memorial Tower, is the body of the Grand Duke. His body is solidified by white gold translucent metal, like amber. Garen didn't know the people before and after him, but the fluctuations shining on everyone's bodies were almost all weak. With so many people standing in line here, he was the only one who was the totem light of a first-class totem master. There were Type 3 and Type 2 totem masters in front and behind, and their bodies were filled with a strong smell of blood. Those who can survive safely at this time are all executioners whose hands are stained with the blood of countless monsters. Soon it was his turn. Garen took a step forward and gently placed the golden 9 flowers in his hand in front of the crystal coffin. He bowed and turned to the left. Looking up, he saw that they were all densely packed with people, but there was no one he recognized. People gathered together in twos and threes, talking quietly, and some stood alone with indifferent expressions. The nobles not far away were all gloomy. Garen did not see Gerda's figure. Ever since the Grand Duke spent his life colliding with the strange bird yesterday, the monster army suffered heavy losses and finally retreated. The strange bird was also seriously injured and staggered away. The war situation has temporarily stabilized. But Gerda was nowhere to be seen. Garen sighed. Originally, he only came here to make friends with Goth to seek his own interests, but he didn't expect that after seeing the scenes that happened in history, he felt uncomfortable. 2 middle-aged men and women soon walked into the morning hall, both wearing white gold armor and white robes with silver edges. Lord Vesta, Lord Kanan, the person greeting the guest, took the initiative to step forward and greet him respectfully. The war is tense and we can only stay for a short time. The man Kanan nodded solemnly. He and Vesta are now the 2 strongest 3-type totem masters in the city. Although they are still far behind the Grand Duke, after being frightened by the previous battle, the monsters obviously did not dare to push the inner city too hard. The situation has also been greatly eased. A group of people complimented the 2 people and walked towards the coffin. Those who ask about the situation, those who are worried, those who want reassurance. A large crowd of people gathered around them, hoping to get the answer they wanted. Garen retreated far away from the center. Looking at the noisy scene inside, he suddenly felt a little stuffy. Turning around and walking out of the hall, he looked up and saw that the surroundings were sparse and almost no one could be seen. There were only some numb-looking people walking on the street. Most of the people took refuge in pre-constructed fortifications. Garen searched everywhere and found no trace of Gerda. The city is deserted now, and there are too many places to hide. After walking to the street and strolling for a while, Garen was finally ready to leave the inner city through the tunnel. Galen. A confused voice came from a passing carriage. Garen turned around and looked at the black carriage that stopped beside him. Who are you? The carriage door curtain opened, revealing a solemn man's face. I met at Gerda's house that day. Why don't you come up and have a chat? Garen hesitated. Good. He opened the curtain, got on the carriage, and sat on the right side of the man. The carriage shook slightly and started to move again. The man looked calmly at the street outside. I went to investigate Gerda's house that day, and I happened to see you walking out of it. How was it? Is the situation clear? Garen shook his head. I'm completely confused now. Gerda was controlled by someone and killed his father. Who controlled him? And what happened to Jessica? A trace of heaviness flashed across the man's face. We have made a preliminary investigation into this matter, but only a few high-level officials know about it. All of this comes from Gerda's mother, Julia Jess. Jace, Garen's eyes suddenly focused. You also know, the man glanced at Garen in surprise. As a first-class totem master, you are quite well informed. I happened to meet you on the street, and I will explain the situation clearly to you. If you meet Goth, please enlighten him more. Garen nodded. The man fell silent, seeming to be organizing how to describe what happened next. The carriage also slowed down very considerately. Actually, whether it was Jessica being turned into silver and taking away the heart of Dragon Shadow, or Goth assassinating his father. These were all arranged in advance. He finally spoke slowly. The deep voice echoed slowly in the carriage, appearing more solemn. Julia Jess was originally one of the top leaders of the Black Sky Society. She lurked in Titan City, but unexpectedly fell in love with the Grand Duke. We don't know how much happened in the middle, but later, it should be Jess gave up her position for love, gave up everything about herself, and chose love. She also became pregnant with Gerda. When she gave up everything, she discovered that the Grand Duke really loved not her. The man paused. Jess is an extremely arrogant and dedicated person. She gave everything she could for the Grand Duke. When she gave up everything, was pregnant with a child, and went to the Grand Duke alone, she found that the Grand Duke was not very good at all. I liked her just for fun. At that time, the Grand Duke was young, handsome, and talented. There were too many people who liked him. They were not very interested in such a pretty woman. Then, the tragedy began. It seems that this is the root of everything. Garen breathed out. As deep as the love is, so is the hatred. She has been planning on Gerda for 20 years, and it finally has an effect. Life, the man said with emotion, we will make many mistakes and wrong choices in our life, but we must never make mistakes irreversible. He seemed to be thinking of his own life. So where is Jace now? Garen asked the most critical question, the most important question to him. Dead. The man smiled helplessly. Otherwise, do you think Gerda's black domain bird can be activated so easily? That is a top-level totem that has only appeared once in history. It was already afternoon when we got off the carriage. The orange-red sunlight dyed the entire inner city a golden red. Garen looked at the carriage going away and stood at the door of the War Guild headquarters. He felt a little complicated for a moment. He still remembered Gerda's mother, a very gentle and beautiful middle-aged woman. She always gave people a feeling of spring breeze. He always felt that he couldn't see through her, but he didn't expect that there was such deep hatred hidden in her heart. If she is Jess, maybe everything makes sense. He touched the deducer in his arms. The deducers have the function of contacting them at any time. If Jace wants to lurk and implement his plan, then, naturally, you can't bring the inferring device with you. Maybe she will destroy her inferring device directly and ask the headquarters to get a new one. In this case, it should be arranged that this inferring device will appear near Titan City. His mind was racing and he was almost trying to figure everything out. Because Jess didn't want the deducer at all, maybe even Goth detonating the furnace and destroying the base was directed by her. Although this explanation still has this flaw, it is already perfect. Before entering the War Guild, Garen took one last look towards the Duke's palace. He didn't know what state Gerda was in now, but it was obvious that he must be on the verge of collapse. Life, Garen sighed, turned around and walked into the guild. He knew that now was the critical moment for Gerda's true transformation. The Grand Duke was eventually destroyed because of his ruthlessness. Although his behavior is common among nobles in this world, unfortunately, he chose the wrong person. Half a month later, Garen sat at the desk and quietly studied the second technique. In Zuhong's study, Angel and Lilan occupied a corner respectively. Angel kept tossing a silver knife in his hand, with a playful smile on his lips. From time to time, his eyes glanced at Garen. She was wearing tight-fitting brown leather armor, and her slender legs were wrapped in brown leather pants. She looked like a jungle hunter who was out hunting. Leland was dressed in a grey robe, with a hood covering her terrifying face. She sat in a wheelchair with hostility, staring at Angel beside her with some jealousy. "I also want to join my brother's yoke of war," Leland said in a low voice. The pen tip in Garen's hand stopped for a moment, and he looked up at Leland. Angel also looked at Leland in surprise, and the knife in his hand stopped slightly. "I don't allow women who are more beautiful than me to get too close to my brother," Leland said gloomily without concealing it. Garen was immediately speechless. With Ian's current condition, doesn't it mean that even a 60-year-old ant can't get close to him? Leland didn't take it seriously at all, her eyes as cold as a poisonous snake swept over Angel. "There are too many ways to make a person's life worse than death," she pointedly pointed, slowly turning the wheelchair out of the room, and quickly closed the door. Garen looked at Angel with a wry smile, her face obviously changed color. "Why do you have such a perverted sister?" Angel sat down angrily. "To be honest, if she hadn't been your sister, I would have really wanted to slap her to death." Garen didn't know what to say. Should he be grateful that his brainwashing was so successful, or should he be troubled by Leland's too extreme ideas? "You should be a little more patient. In fact, Leland people are quite good," he could only comfort him like this. "Okay. Didn't you see that your little maid was so frightened that she turned pale all day long?" Angel was speechless. "The workshop master in my regiment was also frightened to the point where he only dared to live on the first floor. Doesn't your sister only want to be a woman? Are you all jealous?" Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 325. She stood up again, walked to the window and looked down. "It's strange to say that you obviously don't have any guards here, but no monster around you dares to come in. It seems that you used some secret method." The streets of the community below were empty and there was nothing, which was what made her strange. Garen smiled. 10 Fukasawa giant crocodiles were hiding in the dark, the two-headed lizard dragon was staying in the underground crypt maze, and the petrified white dragon was sleeping underground in the center of the community. After being eaten by too many monsters, the guy with only instinct naturally knows that this is not a place to be trifled with. Even Type 3 monsters will not take the initiative to provoke this place without the necessary benefits. The aura of the two-headed and three-shaped silver totems completely covered up the human aura in the villa. "How are you doing now?" Garen asked casually. "It's been a while since you entered Type 2, right? Is there any new progress?" Angel continued to toss the knife in his hand. "The progress is average. The average Type 2 totem master is no problem. I can deal with 2 of them by myself. It's thanks to your depletion ray. The effect of this fixation technique is really good. You have to speed up your own progress. The situation waits for no one." Garen closed the notebook in front of him. "I am also preparing to move to another place. I will no longer be able to stay here soon." "Why? Where else do you want to move to this kind of environment?" Angel was stunned. "It's not very safe here anymore." "I'm going back to Kuwaitan," Garen replied calmly. "Kuwaitan? Are you crazy?" Angel stared at Garen in shock. "It's at least 3 days' drive from here to Kuwaitan, including the steam train. If you go on foot, it'll take at least 5 or 6 days. Do you know how many monsters there are in the middle? Maybe the second type monsters are all in one piece." Garen didn't explain, just smiled. "What's your plan for that group?" "It's the Wild Hunt," Angel frowned and corrected, "go ahead and hang out near Titan City. Now all the knowledge in Titan City is open to the public. It's like a paradise. As long as you have the ability, you can climb up," she said whistled. "I heard that the Grand Duke White Dragon Eagle has resurrected from the dead, and the Dragon Eagle King actually has the effect of suspended animation and rebirth. Do you know?" Garen was stunned. Fake death and rebirth, a hint of surprise quickly appeared on his face. This is really unclear. The situation in Titan City is good now. The Grand Duke is not dead, which makes many civilian totem masters have high fighting spirit. That damn Goth assassinated his father. It is said that he has been sentenced to be burned at the stake and was burned directly in the furnace. Angel casually talked about recent events. I heard that night at the pagoda, the Grand Duke suddenly sat up from the coffin, scaring the guards almost to the point of peeing. Yeah. Garen just smiled. Although the news in front of us is somewhat inconsistent with history, there has finally been a turn for the better. At this time, in the Kuwaitan Empire, his hometown of Green Forest Province may have also begun to undergo new changes. The father of this world is Windman Terry Jones, cousin Sophie Hathaway, and those ordinary bad friends. And there was the original jealous whom I had a crush on. After being away for so long, probably more than a year, it's time to go back and take a look. I have to sit back as the original Ahashia again. The Royal Alliance is currently at a disadvantage, but it is still a behemoth. If the three core powers do not fall, there will definitely be no problems. The forces of the three major powers are intertwined to form three huge and terrifying institutions. I heard that the resurrected Grand Duke is going to take the initiative and try to clean up the remaining monsters around him. If you must leave, just go to the expedition team one last time before leaving. It will be much safer to follow them, Angel advised. Garen planned to rely on the silver totem for cover along the way. During this period, he would solve the hidden dangers of the deducer and improve his core totem. His current potential points are increasing like a snowball every day. The hidden dangers of the deduction device, the improvement of core totems, and the search for solidification techniques to improve physical fitness. Those are the three goals he has booked now. You might as well just follow me and bring your group with you. I have a way to solve the hidden problem, Garen said directly. I can also see that you look so confident, Angel smiled. I know you after being in contact with you for so long, and I never do anything I'm not sure about. Last time I thought you couldn't handle it alone. I didn't expect that I could live such a comfortable life outside the city. It seems that your strength is no worse than mine. As long as you understand, Garen did not explain. How about it? Think about it. My inheritance depends on the War Guild. Angel became embarrassed. And it requires a lot of resources. It doesn't matter, there will be hope, Garen said firmly. Angel looked at his confident face and hesitated. But when I think about a series of events that have happened recently, it is far from possible to enter Type 3. She gritted her teeth. Okay. I'll go with you. Let's talk first. I already have 2 elite Type 2 totems. It's very difficult to enter Type 3. There's no rush. Garen didn't have the slightest concern. When he returned to the Royal Alliance's territory, he would definitely have everything he wanted when he returned to the territory of the Royal Alliance. With the Totem Masters suffering a large number of casualties, he would definitely have everything he wanted. Compared to the relatively barren Titan City, in terms of performance, it is definitely much stronger. The two discussed some cooperation matters in detail. They were connected by the shackles of war, and Angel felt a sense of belonging to Garen. After chatting for a while, cheers finally appeared from the direction of the inner city. It must be that some monster clusters in the surrounding outer city have been killed again, Angel said with a smile. It's been like this these past few days. Garen nodded. In a few days, we will be ready to set off. Just as you said, set the time for the Grand Duke's sweep. That's fine. 5 days later. In 3 directions around Titan City, large swaths of monsters surge towards the inner city like a tide. After the monster ocean, there are 3 types of monsters. The white disk-like Titan City seemed to be gradually being submerged by countless black ants from all directions, and larger insects would appear from time to time among the ants. Outside the city, on a high yellow rock cliff, Garin was dressed in a grey robe, and behind him were several carriages parked. These horses were all black, with horns and tusks. They looked like horses, but they were contaminated creatures. Angel and 4 members of the Wild Hunt gathered together and chatted quietly. Several people looked at the large group of monsters surrounding them in wonder. There was also a mysterious awe towards Garin who brought them out. A group of black monsters flew past everyone's heads, passing through black shadows and flying towards the inner city. Lei Lan was sitting in a white wheelchair, constantly calculating something with a pen and paper, writing and converting various extremely complex formulas and numbers. No one can understand it except herself. Lala was on the side ready to take care of Lei Lan. Garin looked at the inner city from afar, which was gradually surrounded by a tide of monsters. In the city's defense zone, an arch-shaped opening slowly opened. A group of men in black cloaks riding black horses slowly walked out. These knights' cloaks were all covered in extremely thick black armor. The leader was tall and majestic, sitting on the back of a giant horse. A black helmet completely covered his head, and only his reddish eyes could be vaguely seen. His whole body was wrapped in a set of armor that was extremely gorgeous and intimidating. Like a moving iron tower, he slowly stepped out of the defensive circle. Bang bang! The 4 hooves of the giant horse trampled on the ground, leaving fist-sized holes and splashing dust and vibrations. Click! The knight suddenly raised his head, and a slight sound came from his armor. A gust of breeze blew by, lifting up the long white hair exposed under the knight's helmet, and the waist-length hair flew up in the wind. With a clang, the knight suddenly pulled out the giant sword from his waist. Fight to protect the old, weak, women and children. Fight for justice and justice. I am the Grand Duke of Quitesman, the splendid king. This is fighting for the people. To retreat is to give up. He suddenly raised his sword high. Kill! Countless monsters rushed toward him ferociously. The 3-eyed black bear and black-winged strange bird behind him came back, carrying many other huge 3-type monsters and sprinted over. The heavy footsteps became heavier and heavier. All sounds were suddenly drowned out by strange roars and roars. A pair of huge black wings suddenly sprouted from the back of the black-armored knight. With him as the center, a huge black aura area emerged spontaneously. All monsters that entered this area were naturally decomposed, as if they were torn into pieces by some huge force. Several Type 3 monsters rushed towards the black area. Chirp! Suddenly there was a clear cry, and over the entire Titan city, a shadow of a giant black bird slowly appeared, filling the entire sky. The Black Knight sat upright on the giant horse without any movement. The giant horse advanced slowly, and the black aura seemed to be a giant mouth that swallowed all things, swallowing all the monsters it came into contact with and turning them into minced flesh and blood. Nothing can stand in his way. The black aura continues to spread like a plague. The 3-eyed black bear roared and finally turned around and ran away. A large number of black cavalry poured out from behind him and rushed towards the outer group of monsters. They were like black torrents, piercing the tide of monsters. From a distance, the Black Knight suddenly looked in the direction of Garin. Garin also saw the other party's gaze. "Is this your choice? Goth, I wish you good luck," he murmured in a low voice, sighed, and finally turned around and left the top of the cliff. The carriages gradually turned around, lined up, and drove towards the distance. Kill! Amidst countless shouts of death. Goth was like a pitch-black reef, with huge and thick black smoke lingering around him, which was the terrifying aura emanating from between the black feathers. Sitting in the middle of the battlefield, the entire sky above was cast in his shadow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 326. Golden sunlight shines down. Between the green grass, An earth-yellow driveway winds and stretches into the distance. 3 black carriages drove slowly into the distance in the driveway. Garen sat in the carriage and looked out the window quietly. On the high mountain in the distance on the left, there stands a continuous grey fortress. The fortress is surrounded by sawtooth-topped walls, and some of the walls have been smashed to create gaps. There was silence. Several giant black bats were hovering over the fortress, and another black bat had just flown up from inside the fortress. There was a smell of burning fire or something in the air. Garen took out his pocket watch and checked the time, 3:24. "Take a rest, we have been traveling all morning," he said calmly. The sound was not loud, but just loud enough for the other 2 carriages to hear. He sat in the middle carriage, and Roland sat opposite him. The carriage in front was occupied by Angel and the Wild Hunt. Behind is Lala and some food and debris that need to be removed. The 3 carriages suddenly stopped at the same time. The 3 mutant dark horses stopped naturally without anyone directing them. Garen opened the carriage and stepped out of the carriage. He raised his eyes and looked around. Surrounded by emerald green lawns, there are 2 rows of welcoming flower beds built on the roadside, with small red and yellow flowers blooming inside, which are extremely bright. The breeze blew these little flowers and swayed slightly. He looked along the lawn into the distance. The green grass continued to the fortress on the top of the mountain in the distance. The large green in the middle was occasionally interspersed with a few withered yellow weeping willows. Garen looked up at the fortress and frowned slightly. This is a private fortress near Titan City. We haven't left the jurisdiction of Titan City yet. Leyland got off the carriage behind Garen with a low voice. It will take at least a day to get out of the jurisdiction, at our speed. It seems that the fortress has also been captured, Garen guessed. Definitely, there are scavenging bats hovering in the air there. These bats come out during the day and rest at night. They are different from ordinary bats. They only eat rotten corpses, Leyland replied calmly. Scavenging bats only appear when there are no. It is a dangerous place and has a very timid personality. Whether it is a monster or a human, it is an object that needs to be avoided. She took out a small notebook and began to record something in detail. She could only hear the rustling sound of the portable pen tip on the paper. Garen nodded, indicating that he understood. "How long do we have food and water left?" "I'll ask Lala to come out." This is best understood by asking her. Leyland frowned and walked directly to the 3rd carriage. She quickly got on the 3rd carriage, but did not hear the scolding voice. "Brother, come here and take a look. Lala seems to be very ill." Ian's voice came from the carriage. Garen glanced at the Wild Hunt group who had just gotten off the carriage, and waved his hand to signal them to rest. He strode to the 3rd carriage and stepped on it through the open door. The carriage was a little cold and damp, and there were various garbage barrels piled up in the dark interior. The yellow wooden barrels were all wrapped in a cross shape with iron sheets. Lala was leaning against a wooden barrel, her face flushed and she was panting. Cough cough. Cough cough. Lala coughed hard, and the sound of phlegm could be heard faintly in her throat. She covered her chest with her hands, as if she couldn't breathe. Sitting on the ground feeling weak. She was only wearing a gray and white summer dress and no stockings. Garen scanned Lala's body, squatted down, gently grabbed the fabric on the right shoulder of the dress, and gently twisted off the black spot on it. "I feel out of breath," Lala said with difficulty. Seeing Garen was like seeing the savior, his eyes glowed brightly. Garen sighed and gently pressed his right hand to Lala's chest. "Brother," Ian's dissatisfied voice came from the side, and she blocked Garen's hand. "It's just a servant. If he dies, he will die. But be careful of infecting you too." Garen glanced at her, and Leland's pale yellow eyes shone with jealousy and dissatisfaction. She slightly avoided her gaze and instead stared at Lala fiercely. "She is suffering from an acute asthma attack. It's because I didn't think carefully and lived in an unventilated environment for a long time, and there are many microorganisms such as bacteria multiplying. She is just an ordinary person, and it is considered good to be able to survive until now. Let her die, we don't have any medicine to treat asthma. Ian's eyes flickered. Just let me manage these supplies for you. You go out now, Garen said calmly. Obedient. Leyland glared at Lala unwillingly, then stood up and got out of the carriage. His fingers quickly began to tap on his lungs. I don't know the specific treatment, so I can only temporarily relieve your condition. And it's not necessarily true that asthma is confirmed, he said in a low voice as he watched the thumbwheels pull more and more easily. Garen was not focused on anything else, and after quickly relieving the problem of poor blood and chi in his lungs, he finally gently aggravated it with a sudden palm strike. Wow! Lala immediately leaned forward and spat out a mouthful of black phlegm. The black phlegm was about to fall on Garen, but with a flick of his finger, he shot out a strong wind, ejected from the carriage and landed on the grass in the distance. Garen stood up, his heart sinking slightly. At this time and in this environment, once you get sick, it is difficult to find treatment drugs. Now we can only ask you to take some anti-inflammatory drugs and cough medicine. It's all up to you. Lala nodded. It's okay, I'll get better soon. She smiled at Garen and said there was no need to worry. Garen frowned. I found cockroach excrement on your clothes. You'd better stop staying here. Get a carriage. Lala nodded, she also discovered the reason. Garen shook his head, got out of the carriage, and met Leyland with a gloomy look on his face. What's wrong? You shouldn't have agreed to come with her, Leyland whispered. That guy is a burden, useless for anything, and now she's sick and can't even do trivial things. What use do we need her for? You're a little extreme, Leyland. Garen frowned. Her relatives died in the last war. Now she has no family and can only follow us. So what? Leyland glanced at the carriage jealously. Brother, you don't want to have sex with that bitch, do you? You just want to be prettier and have better skin? Do you still want to enjoy it in this environment? If it is peacetime, I can give you as much as you want. You catch me? But it's different now. Looking at the expression on her face, Garen knew that she was becoming more and more jealous of Lala. She herself was disfigured, but she was extremely jealous of other women whose faces were intact. I once promised her that she would serve me in exchange for enough security. Now I have not fulfilled my promise, he whispered. Okay, Leyland, I know you are in a bad mood, but don't take it out on others. Leyland didn't say anything more, he just became more and more gloomy, turned around and left without saying a word. Garen rubbed his temples with a headache. Looking at the sun above my head, the golden sunlight is bright but not very warm. Leyland is indeed much more important than Lara, and she is still teaching him the basics of various research deducers. Now I have to rely on her. So Garen shouldn't annoy her too much. But this distorted worldview and values may indeed cause great trouble to the team. From the Wild Hunt group, Angel walked over with a look of confusion on his face. What's wrong? Lala is sick, probably due to acute asthma, Garen replied helplessly. She is the only ordinary person among us, her physical fitness is not very good, and she was injured before. It is not bad that she is only sick now. What should we do? Angel also frowned. She also had a good impression of Lala, a dedicated maid. I still have some Taanai here. You can give it to her. It should bring some relief. Fine. Galen gave Lala the medicine, and after taking it, she did feel relieved soon after. This medicine mainly acts as an antitussive. Garen didn't think much about it. He was busy letting the petrified white dragon in front clear the way, followed by a two-headed lizard dragon carrying two petrified monitor lizards behind him, surrounded by Fukasawa giant crocodiles and resonance eagles on both sides. They brought a large number of beetles to drive away powerful monsters that might appear around them, but only let some guys with low strength levels in to practice their skills for Angel and others. The potential points are constantly increasing, and the speed is very slow, far less than during the Titan City period. I didn't meet any powerful characters in the wild at all. Next, they advanced for more than a day, until they reached the edge of Titan City's jurisdiction. All they encountered were Type 1 monsters, and very few Type 2 monsters. There was no need to expel them, so Garen simply let his subordinates ignore them and let them in directly. His potential points at this time have also accumulated to an unprecedented 125 points. I have been saving since Titan City. He planned to save more at once and focus on the evolution of the black-striped white tiger. The pale morning white light shines through the gaps in the curtains. Garen slowly woke up from his sleep. He rubbed the sore back of his neck. He opened his eyes and saw Leyland sleeping soundly on his side, lying on his side. It was quiet outside, except for the occasional snort of mutated horses. Sitting upright on the cushion, Garen pulled away the quilt and put on his leather boots. He peeled off a wooden board from the wall of the carriage to the right of the two of them, put it down, and propped up two wooden sticks underneath to form a simple table. Picking up the dried vegetables and beef jerky that he had not finished last night, Garen took 2 large glasses of water from the water bottle on the table and threw the dried vegetables and dried meat in. Then he held a cup in each hand, and the palms of his hands were slightly as red as ruby. More than a minute later, the aroma of dried meat and vegetables suddenly filled the spacious carriage. "Brother," Leyland woke up from his sleep and opened his eyes in confusion to look at Garen. Across the table, she immediately saw 2 large cups on the table. White water vapor floated from the mouth of the cup, which contained a faint fragrance. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 327. Are you awake? Eat something. Garen smiled. He released his left hand and pushed the cup over. The water inside is boiling, with carrots, cabbage, and some green onions floating in the water, and at the bottom is swollen dried meat. The water in the cup has also turned into a light milky white color. A look of emotion appeared on Lei Ian's face. She sat up neatly and gently held the cup with both hands, feeling the heat radiating from it. Your health has improved a lot, Garen whispered. Yes, Leyland nodded, the injury has basically recovered, and the physical strength is no problem. It's just the scars left, so many scars. Her mood suddenly dropped. Want to recover, I'm afraid. Don't say these bad words so early in the morning. There will be opportunities. Garen knocked on the table. Okay, since the others haven't gotten up yet, let's start today's class. Okay, let's talk while eating. Leyland quickly took out a small red leather notebook from his side and placed it on Garen's side of the table. This is the content of bioengineering that I have summarized from my own memories. The research on silver totems and deducers is very complicated and involves many aspects. Bioengineering is only one of them, and you still need to study it later. Matter energetics, and advanced matter mathematics. Of course, you only need to understand, as long as you can judge what is good and what is bad, it is enough. Bioengineering, matter and energetics, advanced physical mathematics? Are these 3 subjects enough? Galen asked. Of course, these 3 disciplines are actually a collective term. If they are further subdivided, they can be divided into more branch disciplines. Leyland nodded. The Black Sky Society follows a biological evolution route, which is different from the tool route of the Royal Alliance. Black Sky Society seeks to use totem technology to ultimately enhance its own life level, so it developed biological totems. The Royal Alliance has developed the Silver Totem, that is, the original totem, to a peak. The final route is that after the original totem is extremely powerful, it will in turn deny the main totem master. The routes on both sides are very clear. They just use the same power in different directions. Garen nodded. He picked up the pamphlet that Leyland summarized and began to read it carefully. Because he had a foundation in advanced mathematics and physics on Earth, and also had a certain foundation in the subject in the previous world, he quickly read through the entire booklet. Except for some additional totem-related formulas, The rest is easy to understand. He also studied bioengineering from his teacher Aining, but it was not as advanced as here. I've told you some of the basics before, Leyland said calmly. Now let me tell you the key points in this booklet. Once you master it, you will be considered an introduction to bioengineering. After speaking, she began to carefully explain several key formulas to Garin. As she narrated, Garin quickly understood these formulas thoroughly. Finally, he saw a change in the skill bar below his vision. A new skill icon slowly emerged, juxtaposed with many knowledge icons in a column. Bioengineering, an introduction. To master it is to master the structural principles inside and outside living things, which is one of the necessary subjects for totem research. Finally developed a skill. Garin also quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Forming skills means being able to use potential points to upgrade. As long as you have subsequent knowledge, you can quickly improve. There are also 2 other subjects. As long as you master them all and look for opportunities to find some research materials from the Royal Alliance and DAD, you should be able to quickly rise to a very high level. There is a certain degree of certainty in solving the hidden dangers of the Inferator. The only other thing he is not good at is his learning ability, which is not ordinary terrifying. As long as he has enough potential points, it is easy for him to steal other people's research system knowledge and experience. The potential point allows him to greatly shorten the learning and understanding time. During this period of time, the other 2 generals did not contact Garin for the time being because the deducer showed lag, which gave him a temporary buffer time. He must take advantage of this time to quickly solve the hidden dangers. He speculated that the reason why he did not develop skills when he first studied bioengineering from his teacher Enning was that the basic content of this subject was not fully learned. Now that it is taught by Leyland, it is finally complete and formed into a skill icon. Bioengineering, Matter and Energetics, Advanced Physical Mathematics. Garin had learned a certain basic level in all 3 subjects some time ago. In order to prevent himself from appearing abnormal, Garin deliberately controlled the progress to prevent Leyland from discovering it too quickly. But today, Leyland threw out the last part of his knowledge, and Garin no longer hesitated, and directly memorized and understood all these subjects with a photographic memory. His current physical fitness has reached the peak of normal human understanding, and he doesn't care about the basic upper limit required by the subject. Entry level is completed quickly. All 3 subjects developed iconic skills in less than 4 hours. From the knowledge of these subjects, Garin also gained a deeper understanding of the Silver Totem. In particular, I have a deeper understanding of the key to controlling the Silver Totem of the Deducer. Until noon, the carriage continued to move forward automatically under the control of Galen. He used the deducer to control the horses in all 3 carriages, so he could lead them forward without a driver. Ahem. There was another cough from the first carriage ahead. Lara had moved to the first car. Her condition seemed to be getting worse. Garin came back from his calculations and frowned slightly. But there is nothing we can do. He raised his head and glanced at Leyland in front of him. She seemed not to have heard him at all. With core totems, totem masters can isolate germs from the outside world to a large extent and achieve the point where they are not afraid of diseases. Garin felt a little emotional. No wonder totem masters, no matter who they are, seem to look down on others. The reason, it turns out that it comes from various aspects. Forget it, let's upgrade the core totem earlier. Without strength, there is nothing we can do. Even if we go out to find medicine, he has no good way to deal with this bacterial infection, and looking at Lala, it doesn't seem to be as simple as asthma. He calmed down and his eyes fell on the column of his totem. Core, white tiger with black stripes, the first form totem, which can be improved. Evolution success rate, 11% potential points consumed, 700%. Abilities, tail whip, piercing bite. 3 seconds after Garin's eyes fell on the totem, the entire icon suddenly blurred, and then quickly became clear. It was as if it had never happened. If his potential points hadn't disappeared by 7 points, Garen might have thought that he was dazzled before. Come again, he was already numb. Last time, he piled up more than 100 potential points, but failed to evolve successfully. Now this formation is completely childish. The second time, failed. The third time, failed. The fourth time, it still failed. Not sure if it was his own misunderstanding, Garen vaguely felt that his core totem icon seemed to have changed slightly. The fifth time. Fail. Buzz. Suddenly, a small red symbol slowly appeared behind the icon. Missing core, zebra crystal. Unable to evolve successfully. Consumption of potential points begins to be returned, and some potential points produce catalytic effects. The icon of the white tiger with black stripes suddenly dimmed. Garen was slightly stunned. Suddenly, he felt a huge stream of cool air coming out of the icon. After wandering around in his body, it returned directly to his mind. The value of potential points is rising like crazy. From a few 130, it quickly increased to 150, 170, 190, and 210. It didn't stop until 213. Garen's heart suddenly felt certain. Sure enough, the core totem uses potential points to evolve, and it does have an accumulation mechanism. Now it seems that in the absence of the key evolution core, the accumulated potential points will not be completely consumed, but will be used to store them in the totem body as accumulated power. This is the same as before, the potential points that failed to improve will be returned naturally. It seems that those potential points that failed did not disappear and wasted, but were accumulated in the totem body and used to accumulate power. Then why is there such a probability? He frowned again. Or is it the difference in gene fragments? Is it a matter of activation success rate? Is it a random activation every time, or does it accumulate to a certain stage before it can be activated and evolve? He suddenly recalled the bioengineering he had just learned, and combined with the common knowledge of genetics on Earth, he suddenly made a bold guess. Is it true that every time you try to activate, you are activating a gene fragment? If activation fails, it will be in vain. If activation is successful, evolution will be successful? The so-called probability may be judged comprehensively from the quantity and quality of gene fragments. Activation failure will expel this gene. So what determines the criteria for success and failure? Garen was lost in thought. The activation mechanism of this potential point is like chaos, and it seems to have very complex calculation rules. If you explain it this way, it should be clear. Activating evolution itself is to select the best direction from countless genes. And if you want to evolve this gene, you will definitely need a certain amount of activation energy. These 2 points determine the potential way to evolve. First, it is the minimum number of potential points required for an evolution. Just like the black-striped white tiger has stuffed so many in front and back, it can be considered as the first evolution. The previous potential points are not evolution at all, but the accumulation of the first, the energy of sub-evolution. How to judge whether it is evolution or accumulation? This probably requires some skills. The second is the probability. After the required number of potential points is reached, it will start to try to evolve. If it succeeds, it will be completely consumed. If it fails, some of the potential points will be returned, just like the white tiger with black stripes. In this regard, the original totem and the silver totem should be different evolution mechanisms. Garen's heart became clearer and clearer. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 328. He had only evolved the silver totem before and had never used the original totem, so he didn't understand the situation at all. Only now do we really understand what is going on. The primitive totem is a living organism, which has a certain amount of energy accumulation itself, and can also increase its energy reserves through external food. Therefore, potential point evolution only requires one step of guidance and activation. The original totem is different. It does not need to eat and cannot store energy. Everything needs to be provided by the totem master. So evolution requires two steps, accumulation and activation. No wonder Leland said that the silver totem will surpass the original totem sooner or later. Garen suddenly understood the biggest advantage of the silver totem. Not a deducer, not a control quantity. It's about the difficulty of evolution. Now the cheap daddy in this world is also engaged in biochemical research. Garen is becoming more and more impatient. He wants to get there in advance and use the classics to improve his knowledge level. Striped crystal, my dad used it as a potted plant when I was a kid. I didn't expect that the black striped white tiger actually needs this thing as the core of evolution, Garen said with emotion. Now that I think about it, Dad has such rare treasure resources everywhere. He is worthy of being a royal researcher. In Ahashia's memory, resources of this level were simply taken care of casually. It's everywhere in the house. Since these are very rare and alternative resources, not mainstream evolutionary resources, after Galen learned some knowledge from Aining, he still did not think of the value of these things. Only now did he realize that he was in a treasure house before and didn't know it. Zebra crystal is a very peculiar crystal that can continue to grow as it is planted. Once you get home, you can have as much as you want. Moreover, the black striped white tiger requires hundreds of potential points to activate an evolution. Once the evolution is successful, there is no telling what kind of powerful existence it will become. Garen is also looking forward to it. He took a closer look at himself. If you think about it carefully, the silver totem cannot take back its storage, so it can only be kept in the outside world. In this way, the light of the silver totem is equivalent to always existing. It is equivalent to the role of the core totem. If there is no deduction device trouble, I am now equivalent to a Type 3 totem master. Garen defined himself, and his mind suddenly became clear. The biggest trouble now is probably the deducer. As long as the problem of the deducer is solved first, then I don't have to worry about the silver totem under my command going out of control. The core totem should be improved as long as I go back. His eyes finally glanced at the icon of the black striped white tiger, and the data on it changed naturally. Core, white tiger with black stripes, the first form totem, which can be improved. Evolution success rate, 11% gene fragment activation consumes potential points, 700% accumulate 145 potential points to achieve a chain activation requires the core resource zebra crystal. Abilities, tail whip, piercing bite. The data display of talent abilities was partly based on Garen's own understanding, and he was not surprised by this. Although there are still many things that are unclear about the evolution of the original totem, Garen has decided not to delve into this aspect for now. After coming back to his senses, Garen stepped out of the carriage. Outside, the wild hunting group and others were cooking something around a bonfire. White smoke and water vapor were mixed together, and a faint aroma of meat floated. The surroundings are already vast dark green plains, and occasionally clusters of dense groves can be seen in the distance. There were several one-horned monitor lizards hovering in the sky above their heads, but they did not dare to come down and attack everyone, and they just made strange screams. It was approaching afternoon, and the reddish sunlight shone from behind, dragging everyone out into a long shadow. Garen and Leyland walked aside alone. Discuss some difficult questions in the three subjects in a low voice. Angel and Lala, who was still coughing, sat around the wild hunt group and chatted together. There were no roars from any monsters around, which made everyone a little strange. But they all attributed it to the mystery of Galen. I feel more at ease about the upcoming journey. Only Garen, who was discussing with Leyland, could see the potential value that was constantly beating below his field of vision. That means that the silver totems under him are frantically chasing and hunting the large group of monsters around them. We are almost out of the Titan City area now, and the next step is a relatively desolate no man's land. According to our slow speed, it will take at least 2 or 3 days to get to the nearest city. Leyland looked at it with some confusion. Garen, brother, what are your plans? What your current theory lacks is concrete practice. I hope to get better research tools as soon as possible. Of course, Garen would not say that this was to increase his potential points, so his speed would be slowed down. Can I get a set of research tools for the time being? What you taught me should be the content of a workshop master, right? Yes, the workshop master is the Silver Lantern Master who specializes in studying totems, but we prefer to study biological totems. Leyland nodded. So do you know, is there a way to turn humans into silver without being controlled? Garen finally asked what he wanted to ask. Silverization of humans itself is our topic. Silverization itself is nothing new. The technical requirements are not high, but it is of little use. No matter how strong the human body is, it is impossible to evolve past carefully selected biological totems. Over at the headquarters, there are many people who choose to self-silver in order to extend their lifespan. Leyland confirmed Galen's idea, but I don't recommend you to do this, brother. She paused. The top primitive totem masters will have a strange phenomenon. The totem light brought by their totems will gradually transform their own bodies, making them stronger, healthier, and longer. There are even many totem masters, and the totem and themselves merge into one, becoming a whole, reaching an unprecedented level of power. This is the original source of silver. Elemental totems, plant totems, animal totems, in fact, the 3 categories of totem types will inevitably reach this stage in the end. The subject and the totem merge into one, turning into a terrifying inhuman existence with a totem. This is what we are doing in the main goal of Black Sky Society's research. Brother, if you want to embark on this path, the conditions required are very difficult. Technically, even I can't help. This kind of technical requirements is too high. Maybe I will study it carefully. You may not be able to gain anything for decades. Leyland rejected Galen's idea. The Black Sky Society has been researching for so many years to achieve a little bit of technical success. It goes without saying that I am the only one. Garen smiled and changed the subject. So how should a totem master define strength? General evolution is divided according to form levels. The first type can never beat the second type, and the second type can never beat the third type, and so on. But there are also spells and secret treasures that will affect the outcome. Of course. There are also the strategic talents of the controller. Speaking of totems alone, the strongest among the totems is the ultimate body. This represents the final evolutionary apex of this species. The ultimate represents the final end of evolution. But who are the different ultimate bodies? Who is strong and weak depends on the essence. The better the essence, the harder it is to evolve, and the stronger it will be after evolution. If the essence is good and the number of evolutions is high, then it will be terrifying if it can really evolve to the top. Just like your white tiger with black stripes, brother, if it can evolve to the 4th type, its power will be unimaginable. Leyland explained carefully. But no one even knows if there is a 3rd type, and no one has ever evolved this thing. Garen shrugged. That's because its foundation is too strong and its evolution is too difficult. Leyland shook his head. I suggest you, brother, find an opportunity to change your core totem. Let's talk about it again. Garen didn't give up yet. Galen and Leyland talked a lot together. This also gave him a deeper understanding of the totem masters. In the late afternoon, the members of the Wild Hunt made potato soup, served with dry bread, and each person had an apple. It was quite a sumptuous meal. A group of people sat around the campfire, warming themselves up. The temperature dropped in the evening, and everyone felt a bit chilly. Lara, as an ordinary person, felt the same. She slept sideways by the fire with a quilt on her side, her face turned red, and her condition was obviously not getting better. Further ahead is Chromium Town. Chromium Town is the border town between Tilan City and Asulai City. I traveled there when I was a child, and the red leaf cakes there tasted good. I don't know how it is now. In the wild hunting group, a petite young woman whispered, feeling a little depressed. This kind of environment has probably been deserted for a long time, right? The man next to him whispered back. Thailand City and Asulai City, Garen was not very familiar with these two places. Which of these two cities has more resources? Does anyone know? Chief Commander, Asulai City is rich in resources. Are you lacking any evolutionary resources? The petite woman looked at Garen in a low voice. She and her companions unanimously called the eldest brother the chief, and after correcting him many times to no avail, Garen let them call him that. I want some striped crystals. Garen wanted to try and see if he could find this thing along the way. Anyway, in the current period of chaos, too many people have died, and a lot of resources have been idle. Maybe you can get it early. If you can find this along the way, you don't have to speed up. Wouldn't it be better to continue to earn potential points all the way back? As for the striped crystal, I know where to find it. The man in black in the wild hunting group, who had never been very talkative, spoke up. Seeing that everyone's eyes were on him, the man pulled down the collar around his neck. There is indeed a mottled crystal in a sewer city. I once saw it in the city museum. It was a crystal stone embedded in a crown. It was preserved as a cultural relic. Are you talking about the Sunang crown? I have also heard of that crown, but I didn't expect it to be in the museum in Asulai City. The last man in the group whispered. Angel nodded, glanced at Garen, and found that he was already thinking slightly. After Galen thought for a moment, he spoke again. How long does it take us to turn from here to Asulai City? Does anyone know? The petite woman was most familiar with these geography, so she weighed her answer. It's similar to our current route, except that the turning direction is in the opposite direction. Time will not be delayed. We must pass through two roads, Asulai City and Tilan City. According to our current direction, we are heading towards Tilan City. Vicky, are you so sure? Even without a map, the man in black in the group asked doubtfully. My home is from Tilan City, and I played everywhere around it. Vicky, a petite woman, replied. How's it going? Are you going to Asulai City? Chief, her eyes fell on Garen. She has always been interested in this powerful and mysterious man. He seems to have an unusual relationship with eldest sister Angel. Since it won't affect the distance, let's change the route. Garen nodded. Do you have any objection? He looked at Leland and Angel. Both of them shook their heads and said they had no objection. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 329. Isn't it your intention for us to leave Titan City anyway? Angel said speechlessly. If possible, would Tal and Vicky want to go back and see their hometown? She looked at Vicky and the man in black. The petite woman and the man in black fell silent at the same time. Thank you, sister, Vicky whispered, then lowered her head and fell silent. Garen said calmly. If possible, I hope to clear out anything we need along the way. There should be a lot of resources in Asulai City. Then we will make detailed arrangements and take a look at the threat situation. Okay, Angel nodded. After dinner, everyone fed the horses some food, and most of them returned to their carriages. The 3 carriages were bundled together in a grove of trees by the roadside. The surface is covered with some branches and hay for concealment. Garen returned to the carriage compartment and looked at the current potential points. It's 248 o'clock. He looked out of the window and saw that Leyland and Angel were chatting wordlessly, not knowing what they were talking about. The two of them sat by the fire, and the atmosphere was extremely harmonious. Look back. Since you can't upgrade the silver totem, let's upgrade another original totem first. He stretched out his index finger, and a blue light flashed from behind, and a blue line flew out, landed on Garen's fingertip, and immediately transformed into a fluorescent butterfly. The fluorescent butterfly the size of a wash basin flaps its wings gently, emitting a faint blue fluorescence. Garen spread out his platinum aura and covered it around him to prevent others from noticing when they got close to him. Only then did his eyes fall on the totem column at the bottom of his field of vision. Fluorescent butterfly, the first form of totem, which can be improved evolution success rate, 21% gene fragment activation consumes potential points, 500% no chain activation. Ability, poison powder attack, poisonous butterfly powder is released, and can only be released 3 times a day. Effect, paralysis, death. This is the totem given to me by the teacher, and it is also my first totem. Now let's see how lucky I am, if the potential is high enough. Garen didn't think about it anymore, and his eyes stayed on the icon for 3 seconds. Buzz. The icon blurred, then quickly became clear. Failed. The second time, the icon blurred for a moment, then became clear again, but still failed. The third time, the icon blurred, but this time it did not appear directly clear, but continued for a while. Finally, the fluorescent butterfly folded its wings and suddenly began to undergo abnormal changes. The blue fluorescence around it was gradually disappearing, and its entire huge body began to become transparent quickly. In less than 10 seconds, the entire wash basin-sized fluorescent butterfly disappeared directly from Garen's sight. There was only a clear touch on my fingertips, and I felt that the fluorescent butterfly was still standing on my fingers. There was a look of surprise on his face. I remember that among the fluorescent butterflies, the information given by the teacher was not about evolution, but the poisonous white butterfly. Before he left, he received some information from Aining, which was research information on fluorescent butterflies, including there is only one evolutionary path for this butterfly, the poisonous white butterfly. But the current evolved form is obviously not the poisonous white butterfly in the recorded data. Garen looked carefully and could barely see the fluorescent butterfly still standing on the tip of his finger. There was only a very small outline, and it was almost invisible to his 5 senses. He couldn't help but look at the icon description in the totem column. Color-changing disc, fluorescent butterfly evolves into its second form, the second form's original totem unascendable, the ultimate body. Ability, color-changing invisibility, sensing and adapting to the subtle color light of the surrounding environment to achieve the purpose of color invisibility. Reproductive daughters, reproducing color-changing moths can be used for reconnaissance and alert once a day. Poison powder attack, poisonous butterfly powder will cause dizziness, hallucination, and paralysis effects. It will take effect on contact. Garen frowned. The ability of the color-changing disc made him slightly disappointed. For reconnaissance and the like, he already has beetles. So far, hundreds of beetles are scattered around, reporting back all dangers around him at any time. There is some overlap in this ability. But the concealment is pretty good. Not all totems evolve according to their own wishes. Garen shook his head and flicked his fingers, and suddenly he seemed to remember something. A thought. The color-changing saucer on the finger suddenly flew up, and its invisible tail suddenly discharged a large number of gray-brown eggs, which landed on the table. Each of these eggs is about the size of a fingernail and oval in shape. Galen noticed that there was no limit on the number of reproductive offspring in the description of the color-changing disc. Watching the oval brown eggs burst one after another, small transparent invisible moths emerged from them. He counted carefully and found that there were 25 of them. These little moths flew out of the window silently, and under the control of Garen's thoughts, flew in all directions. Over the next few days, Galen continued to accumulate moths, which soon numbered over 100. The team passed through several empty villages and towns and replenished some basic supplies. During this period of time, Galen's moths began to grow slowly. The only drawback is that the color-changing disc reproductive offspring need to consume silver. Fortunately, Galen brought some silver nuggets as preparation. More than 100 moths consumed 3 pieces of silver. But he discovered another benefit to these moths. There is no need to eat, what needs to be consumed is the power of the totem light. The chameleon moth is released once and can only be controlled for 2 hours. Then you have to go back to recuperate. These color-changing moths are very stealthy and scattered around, making them almost undetectable by any monsters. On the 4th day after leaving the Titan City area, all the monsters I met along the way were Type 1 monsters, and very few Type 2 monsters, let alone Type 3 monsters. But finally, the parasitic beetles that were scouting at the front suddenly disappeared, and they silently lost contact with Garen's Fukasawa crocodile. The convoy finally stopped moving forward, and Garen stopped the convoy in advance. Wait until the reconnaissance ahead is clear before moving forward. At night, Garen stood beside the carriage and looked at the fortress in the mountains in front of him. The stone fortress is square in shape with a tall minaret in the middle. The buildings inside are well structured and there is almost no major damage. The fortress was silent, no lights, no fire, nothing. Just darkness. Garen frowned. The place where my scout bugs disappeared is near this fortress. He turned back, looked at Leland who walked up to him, and whispered. 3 carriages formed a circle, with a bonfire burning in the middle, and a faint stream of heat emanating from the middle. But except for a man from the Wild Hunt who was guarding Lara, everyone else gathered around Garen. If I'm not wrong, this fortress is likely to be dangerous. But this area is the only way we must pass. There are more troublesome complex terrains and lakes on both sides. If we want to make a detour, we will need to spend at least 5 days. It takes a long way around, Galen explained. So we should try to see if we can pass here. If the monster inside is too strong, we will leave decisively, right? Angel added. Leela. It's up to me, eldest sister. The man in the red hat nodded, raised his right arm, and the arm guard on his forearm suddenly emitted a ray of silver light. The silver light fell on the ground in front and turned into a golden lioness. Ouch! The lioness roared and leaned down to look at her master. Its tail is actually a flexible yellow snake. The snake head at the end kept making hissing sounds, twisting, and its eyes were scarlet. The man in the red hat mounted the lioness and quickly disappeared into the night, rushing towards the fortress. Not a single sound was made. Garen sensed the troops under his command. The number of Fukasawa giant crocodiles has reached 20, and the number of beetles has also reached 200. The 2-headed lizard dragon is simply a war machine factory. It continuously parasitizes the deep lake. The giant crocodile creates a large number of secondary biological totems. As long as she is given time, she will be able to continuously create a large number of parasites. Garen has confirmed that there are absolutely no such terrifying 3-type totems in the Black Sky Society. There are only a few fixed evolutionary directions for them. It is not random evolution like him relying on potential points, but controllable directional evolution. The main reason is that so far, almost no one has seen parasitic totems. The weirdest totem is the reproductive nest totem, which is a specialty of the Black Sky Society. The authenticity of this point has been confirmed by Leylan, who knows the Black Sky Society best. Garen learned some relevant information from her. The evolution of his potential points seems to be completely different from that of Black Sky Society. Watching Leela, the man in the red hat, disappear into the darkness, Garen's heart moved. More than 10 beetles followed Leela and crawled toward the fortress. The people in the Wild Hunt, including Leland and Lala, are not very sure about the extent of Garen's current strength. I just know that he is very mysterious and has at least 7 or 8 totems under his command. And it is mysterious and can always do things that no one can imagine. After leaving Titan City at this time, everyone, including Angel, felt insecure. The mysterious and unclear Garen gave them a strong sense of support. So everyone unconsciously turned their attention to Garen. Wait a moment and see the result. If Leela can come back safely and find out the situation, I can give him a small reward. He smiled and said calmly. He already had a vague idea in his mind at this time. There are already a lot of Fukasawa giant crocodiles parasitized by the two-headed lizard dragon, and he cannot achieve the maximum goal of creating parasitic beetles by controlling them alone. Just feeding and arranging them requires a lot of energy. But if they are dispersed to other people and let some of these beetles follow others and obey their orders, this will enhance the strength of the people around them in a disguised way, and also allow the rest of the people to spend their energy feeding these beetles, achieving the goal of even faster expansion. Distribute these beetles as rewards to your subordinates. As long as they do not hesitate, they can achieve the purpose of safely improving their strength, and the role of these beetles will be further explored and utilized. The situation will not be out of your control. Suddenly, Garen thought about it. Did Haitian society's initial thoughts be the same as his own? Distributing the deduction device can not only improve the overall quality of one's own forces, but also keep the situation from being out of one's control. The little joy he had felt in his heart was immediately suppressed. It seems that the problem of control of the inferring device needs to be solved as soon as possible. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 330. A group of people stood quietly in the woods and waited. Vicky lit a few torches and distributed them to the crowd. The crackling sound of the burning torch was eerily clear. There were sounds like frogs croaking in the distance, one after another. Cuckoo, cuckoo. Garen stared in the direction of the fortress. He suddenly stretched out his fingers and quickly began to carve symbols in the void in front of him. A little black flame ignited at his fingertips, leaving black lines in the air. Soon, as the symbols were formed, his eyes suddenly expanded and lost focus. Vision sharing technique. Angel was slightly shocked. It happened so quickly. She looked at Garen in disbelief, with a complex expression on her face, not knowing what she was thinking of. A full 10 minutes later, a subtle roar came from the direction of the fortress, which seemed to be the roar of a lion, but it was far away. Let's go. There is indeed a problem here. Garen took the lead and walked out, walking towards the fortress seemingly slowly but actually very fast, with a very rhythmic pace. The rest of the people followed him, only Leyland followed him slowly, while Angel and others had a little difficulty following. He had no choice but to recruit primitive totems to carry him. In the dark night, a group of people walked directly from the dark woods through the large grassland and moved quickly towards the fortress. There were only 3 orange firelights moving quickly in the dark night, and no one could be seen clearly. Garen took the lead, following the driveway of the fortress and arriving directly at the main entrance. The wooden iron door was open, and there were obvious signs of damage at the keyhole. The sound of roaring lions could be heard from behind the door. Garen went directly to the main entrance. Inside is a large flat stone square. The faint moonlight shines on the square, coating it with a layer of white-gray. In the middle of the square, Leela was commanding the snake-tailed lioness to fight with 2 other shadow monsters. Every time the lioness roared, a circle of light yellow light spread out and disappeared 3 meters around her. Each aperture can knock the 2 black shadows away, causing them to roll several times on the ground. The shadow climbed up tenaciously and continued the attack. Garen got closer and could see clearly what the 2 black figures were through the moonlight. It turned out to be 2 black panthers with horns. They lowered their heads, pawing their hooves backwards like bison, breathing heavily from their noses, and their eyes were red. It's not a silver totem, Garen carefully identified it, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Not a totem, but a mutated creature infected by germs. Chief. They are not strong enough, but they are too resistant. Leela shouted loudly to the side, the speed is too fast. Although the attack is very weak, I can't catch their shadow at all, so I can only passively fight back. It can be seen that he looked a little depressed. Moo. A black bull leopard let out a roar, scoffed and rushed towards the snake-tailed lioness. This kind of high-speed sprint is fine for ordinary creatures, but it is not enough to deal with the snake-tailed lioness with the light of totem. The snake-tailed lioness stood on the spot, let out a fierce roar, and a circle of yellow light spread out from her body, directly knocking the black bull leopard away again. With a bang, the black bull leopard was violently thrown a long distance, and its forehooves dragged out long black marks on the ground. I'll do it. Angel also rushed behind Garen at this time and got off the Black Panther. Looking at the two black bull leopards, she felt a little warm in her eyes. These are living mutant species. If we can use unit factories to copy them and make them into totems. Leyland smiled and said nothing. However, Vicky from the Wild Hunt stood up. Why does a speedy person need to take action? I'll do it. Before she could finish her words, a yellow line suddenly shot out from behind and shot directly at the two black bull leopards. After two soft kai-sing sounds, the yellow line flashed across the two black bull leopards, flew directly back to Vicky's shoulders, and landed on. It was a golden mink all over. It lay obediently on its owner's shoulder and kept licking its bloody paws. The eyes actually glowed with green light like a wolf, giving people a sinister and vicious feeling. The two black bull leopards each had a claw on their sides and abdomen. They walked crookedly on the ground for a few steps, then couldn't hold on any longer and fell to the ground. Be careful. There are still others around, Leela shouted loudly. There were many dark shadows around, and the shadows of black bull and leopards kept flashing by, and there were actually many silver totems mixed in among them. Garen's expression changed slightly. In the aura of these totems, he actually felt the second type of totem, and not just one. With so many Type 2 totems gathered, there might even be Type 3 monsters here. Exit here first, he ordered in a low voice. Several people began to slowly exit the fortress gate. Be prepared for sneak attacks by monsters at any time. There must be a lair here, Leyland suddenly whispered. She walked to Garen, and her voice was only heard by Garen. The lair is the biological weapons factory of the Black Sky Society. If we can occupy a lair. Isn't this lair developed by the Black Sky Society? Garen frowned. Of course not. They originally discovered a special creature's nest and then imitated it. But many of them were just crude modifications and there was no way to really control the nest, Leyland explained. There should be a black bull leopard's lair here. This creature is recorded in the Black Sky Society and is a very good speed creature among the first type totems. Brother, if you want to contact the deducer, there are two ways to control it. There are two directions. One is to find a non-Black Sky Society controlled deducer to transfer the silver totem in your hand. The second is to directly modify it on the original deducer. Looking for a deduction device that is not from the Black Sky Society. Is there such a deduction device outside of the Black Sky Society? Galen asked. Actually, the deducer crystal was originally discovered by the Black Sky Society in the outside world. It was only transformed through special transformations to become what it is now, Leyland explained in a low voice. Garen's footsteps suddenly stopped. Angel and others in front also noticed it and stopped immediately. Stand guard around this fortress. If there is a situation where you are unable to resist, just send out signal fire bombs, Garen ordered. Leyland and I have some things to deal with. Angel frowned and glanced at Leyland, but didn't say anything, just nodded. Then let's go back and wait for you. Garen nodded. Watching Angel and others quickly push out of the fortress, he turned to face more and more black bull leopards gathering in the square. Then how do you occupy the lair? First we need to clean up these black bull leopards and remove all guards. The nest itself is like a plant, with roots stuck in the ground and absorbing nutrients. These black bull leopards are like their fruits. They are the vassals and guards controlled by them, Leyland said calmly. The black bull leopard's lair should only be of type 1, with only a small number of type 2. These gathered black bull leopards should be all there are. Garen also breathed a sigh of relief. As long as it's not a type 3 monster. Type 3 monsters can be strong or weak. Their strength is too troublesome. If you don't know your abilities, you may be injured or killed accidentally. The two faced the black bull and leopard in the entire square. Garen took a step forward, and several deep swamp monitor lizards crawled out from the darkness behind him, and a resonance eagle circled in the sky above him. He pointed to the dozens of black bull leopards in the square. The resonating eagle swooped down and made a strange, unpleasant cry. At the same time, a resonant heartbeat sounded. Poof! The two black bull leopards took a few steps forward and then fell to the ground. The bleeding from the corner of his mouth stopped making a sound. A total of 5 Fukasawa giant crocodiles swung their long tails and crawled toward the black bull leopard covered in pitch black scales. From time to time, they rushed out like lightning, biting the black bull leopard rushing from the side, and snapped it into 2 pieces with a click. Then throw it away. The sharp claws of the black bull leopard could only leave a few fine marks on their bodies. Several type 2 black bull leopards faced off against the Fukasawa giant crocodile. They were extremely fast and covered in black bone armor, as if they were man-made and unusually regular. Ouch! The type 2 black bull leopard lowered its head suddenly, and a blue arc suddenly lit up between its horns. Laugh! The electric arc drew a blue line and hit the Fukasawa giant crocodile hard. The electric current left a streak of burnt black on the scales. The Fukasawa giant crocodile was shocked back by the electric current, took several steps back, and let out a low roar of injury. Electricity, Garen suddenly had a look of surprise on his face. He spread his right hand, and his 5 fingers instantly sketched outlines of black fire. With countless after-images, a spell symbol was formed again. Leland on the side was stunned to see the scene of Garen. 5 or 5 vision sharing techniques. No one has ever been so perverted. Even in the Black Sky Society headquarters where perverted elites roamed around, she had never seen a person who could depict 5 spells at the same time. Can human fingers really be this flexible? Garen was not in the mood to pay attention to Leland's reaction at this time. His field of vision at this time had been directly divided into 5 parts, 4 of which were on the Fukasawa giant crocodile, and the other one was on the resonating eagle in the sky. 5 fields of view observed the type 2 black bull leopard from different angles and directions. The idea he had been vaguely thinking finally had a hint of realization. The electric current with the properties of totem light. To me, doesn't it have the same properties as the legendary dragon's blood? His eyes narrowed slightly, and he already had a clear goal in mind. Through the sharing of vision, Garen's powerful secret weapon physical fitness finally showed its power. He controlled 5 totems at the same time, forming a hemispherical defense circle around the 2 of them. Every black bull leopard that pounced on it was pulled back with extreme accuracy, or was directly bitten to death. Every electric attack from those type 2 black bull leopards was blocked by Garen with the Fukasawa giant crocodile. This powerful electric shock hit the black scales, leaving only a little burnt black, and did not do much harm to the giant crocodile. Garen's eyes were calm, and his pupils were faintly divided into 5 fan-shaped parts, each showing images from different angles. A type 2 black bull leopard sneaked around behind the 2 Garen. It lurked, hiding its body in the darkness, and approached Garen's back step by step. Suddenly, it flew up silently and grabbed the back of Garen's head. There was a trace of blue electricity on its sharp claws. Just when the claws were about to touch Garen, a big black mouth suddenly appeared from the right side. Click. The Fukasawa giant crocodile bit into the black bull leopard's waist, and the sound of bones breaking kept coming from its mouth. The giant crocodile bit the prey and fell to the ground with a muffled sound. Then he started rolling on the spot. After just a few clicks and a few arcs of electricity flashing in the big mouth, there was no more movement. The body of the Type 2 black bull leopard was broken into 2 pieces and fell from its mouth. The 5 totems were like a meat grinder, directly strangling every black bull leopard in the square. Soon, these black bull leopards gradually became fewer and fewer, and finally there were only 2 or 3 left, whimpering and looking at Galen in fear, possibly turning around and running away at any time. Garen stopped his technique and control, and looked at the tragic scene of black bull leopard corpses everywhere in the square, without any emotion on his face. Let's go and see the lair here. How to occupy the lair. The surprise on Lei Ian's face faded slightly, and he pulled down the hood that had been blown up by the wind to cover his withered and ugly face. It is very difficult to control the nest, but the core material for making the deduction machine is collected from the nest. It is a thing called a resonance stone, and its function is very wonderful. After dividing a resonance stone into 2 halves, regardless of the distance, no matter how far away it is, the vibration of one piece can be transmitted to another through resonance. There is only a certain loss, but the frequency is the same. So Black Sky Society uses this as the core to transmit long-distance information, and convert this simple vibration frequency complicated, informed, and encoded. It becomes a deducer function that you can use for communication. So how exactly do you master the lair? Rely on the resonance stone, Garen asked. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 331. Yes, Lei Lan was very knowledgeable and knew these secrets very well and talked about them eloquently. A nest only has one resonance stone, which is the core and heart of everything. Once this is missing, although they will not die, they will gradually wither and turn into ordinary plants. To control a nest, 2 things need to be done. What 2 points? Garen finally watched the Fukasawa giant crocodile kill the remaining black bull leopards, and walked towards the spire tower in the center of the fortress. Raylan followed him. The first is to divide the resonance stone. Most of it is in your hands and the other half stays in the nest. You can control the life and death of the nest through the resonance stone. This is a plant without intelligence. They only have the instinct to survive. Resonance. When you hold the stone in your hand, you will gradually be infected with their aura. The creatures they create will naturally focus on you. The second is to remember the vibration frequency of this kind of nest, which is equivalent to a cryptographic code. Only by remembering this can we truly control the creatures in the nest through this code. This is difficult, very difficult. How can you say no if you don't try? Garen smiled. The 2 followed the steps to the door of the steepled tower. Garen reached out and pushed open the door. There was a dull creaking sound, and the door was slowly opened. A large amount of fine ash was continuously sprinkled above the door leaf, and was blown away by the wind. Inside the tower, the dark hall suddenly came into view for the 2 of them. In the luxurious hall, the walls, floors, fireplaces, paintings, sculptures, everything are covered with a layer of dark green mucus-like flesh. On the wall facing the door, there is a golden sun decoration. This set of gold jewelry was already covered in dark green flesh, with a ferocious eyeball the size of a wash basin growing out of the center. The surface of the white eyeball was covered with bloodshot eyes, and there was a black vertical pupil in the center. It constantly adjusted the focus and stared at the 2 Garen. In the bloodshot eyes of the eyeballs, one can clearly see traces of blood being transfused into the interior of the eyeballs. The blood flowing in the translucent blood vessels is like extremely fine red sand, making a faint rustling sound. Garen looked around the entire hall. The left and right sides of the eyeball are covered with black horns. These horns are arranged in a sawtooth-like formation. Feeling the crisis, these horns slowly extend out and cover the eyeball, like a sheet of black sharp teeth. The big mouth cage completely protects the eyeballs inside. It's really disgusting. There is a sour and rotten smell in the air. Garin frowned slightly and covered his nose. What to do now? Leyland also found a silk scarf and covered his nose. The internal shape of each nest may be different, and you need to find the resonance stone yourself. This is also one of the difficulties. Note that after the death of the nest, the resonance stone will melt instantly. Even the resonance stone taken out will be the same. Garin nodded and slowly walked around the hall to observe. A trace of platinum aura slowly emanated from his body. Strangely, Nest's eyeballs actually shrank slightly, as if he could clearly feel this huge aura. Garin also noticed this. He looked at his eyes with interest. After coming to this world, this was the first time he encountered a creature that could sense his platinum aura. The nest will assimilate the building or area it comes into contact with for the first time. This spire is a structure that has been assimilated by it, Leyland explained on the side. Garin nodded to express his understanding. He stepped on the fleshy floor of the hall, which felt soft, like stepping on rubber. When I lifted my feet, there was actually some white mucus on them, and white filaments pulled out. The platinum aura continued to spread, and Garin concentrated on completely enveloping the entire spire. Soon, the blood flow of the black bull leopard's lair completely appeared in his senses. He smiled slightly, walked to the wall on the left, stretched out his hand, and pressed it directly on an oil painting on the wall. A Fukasawa giant crocodile slowly crawled out from behind him. The giant crocodile opened its mouth wide, and its tongue with ferocious mouthparts slowly emerged, aiming at the location Garin touched. Garin stepped aside. Laugh. The giant crocodile's tongue pierced out like a sharp arrow and pierced the oil painting on the wall. Soon, the tongue rolled back and brought out an oval piece of red meat. Biting the piece of meat with his tongue, he slowly placed it in Garin's open hand. This should be the resonance stone, Garin said matter-of-factly. This is the largest gathering point of energy and blood in the eyeball layer, and it should be what Leyland said. Leyland looked at Garin in surprise. She couldn't understand how Garin found the resonance stone so quickly. He seems to have unimaginable means. The next step is to divide it. The resonance stone is not hard and is easy to divide. Brother, you can study the control mechanism of the nest carefully. The Black Sky Society's deduction device also imitates this mechanism. As long as you can figure it out, you can easily solve the hidden dangers of the infer as soon as possible. Next, the two cut the resonance stone into two pieces, one large and one small, and stuffed the small ones back into the breach in the wall. After Galen's energy spread, he thoroughly memorized the flow of energy and blood in this nest, and mapped them one by one according to Lei Ian's explanation. It was indeed a great gain. As for the frequency of the resonance stone, Garin only felt that this oval-shaped mass of flesh was indeed like a heart, beating slightly at any time, but the frequency was very chaotic and irregular. He held it in his hand for a long time, but there was no sound. It feels repetitive. The two came out of the lair spire. All the black bull leopard carcasses that filled the square outside had actually disappeared, even the traces of blood had disappeared. Absorbed by the nest, Leyland was not surprised at all. Let's meet everyone first. Garin didn't take it seriously and strode toward the gate. After leaving this deserted fortress, Angel and others had already set up a bonfire nearby and were scattered around the fortress. There were several huge snails with black shells lying on the ground. Each of these snails is the size of a cat or dog, and the grass they crawl over is full of withered marks. Angel and Vicky were using thick branches to try and pry the snail shell off. Leela and the rest of the Wild Hunt group gathered together on the side, seeming to record something. Garin glanced at everyone. Leela. Boss. Leela immediately noticed Garin and others coming out, and ran over in 3 steps and 2 steps at a time. Garin had a thought. 5 black beetles slowly crawled out from behind the crowd. The beetle is pitch black, half as tall as a man, and has a mouthful of serrated mouth parts. It looks extremely fierce and ferocious. Totem masters actually generally have their own way of conducting reconnaissance, but these 5 black beetles are the reconnaissance rewards I reward you. They will completely obey your orders, but orders need to be communicated and can only use simple command skills. These beetles each head has the strength of a type of totem. The last words came out, which made Angel, who was a little disapproving at first, slightly moved. 1 type of totem. Impossible, Angel couldn't help but shout, without the light of the totem, no matter how powerful the beast is, it is no match for the totem. Who said they don't have the light of totem? Garen smiled, with a nail bug on his hand. Suddenly, a faint black light suddenly appeared on the surface of these beetles. Hiss. Angel, Vicky, and the other 2 members of the Wild Hunt were all so excited by the scene before them that they gasped. The 5-headed totem was actually given to an outsider at once. Vicky found it hard to imagine. She fixed her gaze on Garen's face, trying to find any sign of physical pain on his face. But unfortunately, she failed. Garen's expression was like a dead tree, without any movement. The fact is indeed the same as his expression. These 5 beetles can only be regarded as a small part of his command. After sending it out, you don't have to worry about feeding or anything else. The Fukasawa giant crocodile can quickly parasitize a few more. And sending them out does not mean that they are out of his control. He can already control these beetles. This is actually a way to gather the team under you. With the enhanced spells and biological totems that you can control, the advantages of such a team are not ordinary. Of course, there is currently only 1 buff solidification technique, but there will be more soon. Garen just looked down on some solidification techniques that were too weak. This is the first time he has encountered a nest. There have been many nests in Titan City before, but it is said that they were all destroyed by the Grand Duke, who went deep behind enemy lines, temporarily easing the crisis in the inner city. This also prevented Garen from actually seeing it. It is impossible for Garen to give up the deducer now. The deducer embodies almost half of his strength. Moreover, the current sluggish state cannot last long. Once the elemental generals find something is wrong, the problems that arise will be troublesome. According to Lei Ian's description, the elemental general is at least the ultimate elemental totem. Second only to the martial commander above, who has mastered the secret treasure, he is extremely powerful. The lowest level is equivalent to the former Grand Duke level. It belongs to the level of the 4th type of mutation totem. Although totems are divided into 3 categories, animals, plants, and elements. But in fact there is also an overall unified division. That is the division of strength within the Black Sky Society. After Galen received this piece of information from Leland, he also used it as his own standard for judging the enemy. The Black Sky Society divides the strength levels of all totems, including itself, into 6 levels. Type 1, Type 2, Type 3, then Aura, Type 4, Type 5. It is said that only the 2 strongest martials can reach the 5th type. The specific power is unclear, but it is definitely not within the reach of ordinary people. In fact, this road is actually the road of elemental totems. Spiritualization is the beginning of elementalization. Therefore, all elemental totems are at least the 3rd type of spiritual light stage. Goth's father, the Grand Duke, is also at this stage. He has not reached the 4th level, but the secret treasure Dragon Shadow Heart in his hand has improved him. Unfortunately, the heart of Dragon Shadow is gone too. That's why he was forced to self-destruct by several Type 3 Aura monsters. In addition, the current Goth belongs to the 4th type, and has mostly elementalized the core totem Black Domain Dragon Eagle King. With the secret treasure in hand, the power is even more powerful. The scariest thing is that this guy is still improving every day. In this body, Ahaj's father Vindman belongs to the 2nd type, Jalisai is the 3rd type, but obviously has not reached the aura. Angel is the 2nd type, and as for the elemental general, they are all at least the 3rd aura. Stage of transformation. All generals have at least one level 3 totem. The difference lies in whether it is aura or not, and the number of types 3 it controls. In fact, Garen's current power is not afraid of any elemental general. The petrified white dragon, the two-headed lizard dragon, and the two third-type totems are all very powerful. The petrified white dragon is the third type of aura. It's a pity that it can't evolve further. Although the two-headed lizard dragon has no aura, it is an endless war machine. According to Lei Ian's judgment, the aura comes naturally from the evolution of the totem. If the essential foundation is too poor and the resources for cultivation are too poor, the evolved totem will not have aura. This is the qualitative difference in evolution. Therefore, even if it is the same kind of totem, its strength will be different after being cultivated and evolved. Originally, Garen planned to follow this path to the end. But the appearance of the lair and the growing understanding of biological totems gave Garen something else to think about. However, this thought can only be fully started after the control of the deducer is resolved. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 332. The wheels of the carriage were turning vigorously. Garen turned sideways and looked at the scenery outside the car window. In the distant blue sky, several huge black spots slowly circled, making chirping sounds in the distance. The green grassland stretches as far as the eye can see, with rolling hills. A few black sheep, as big as calves, are gnawing on the grass. Occasionally, they raise their heads curiously to look at the three passing carriages. The fresh morning air poured in through the car window. Garen lowered his head, looked at the resonance stone in his hand, and played with it carefully. His left index finger ignited black fire from time to time, leaving spell symbols in the air. The right hand is constantly turning over the resonance stone. Putting down his left hand, Garen picked up the pen on the table, dipped it in ink, and wrote it down in his notebook. After recording, he began to turn over the resonance stone repeatedly. How's it going? Have you gained anything? Leyland sat up from the seat and bed opposite and asked with a slight yawn. Garen nodded. It's okay. But it's difficult. The induction technique you gave me is really good. It can amplify this frequency to a certain extent and use it for induction. It just costs silver energy. Silver energy is the foundation that supports totem activities and the operation of spells. I didn't expect you, brother, to have so much silver energy to use the spells. Leyland shook his head. According to our research, silver energy like this, the energy should be determined by the mental state of the Silver Lantern Master. The better the mental state, the more silver energy. Garen nodded. I've always been in good health and in good spirits. There's no need to worry about this. He picked up the pen again and recorded a new line of data in his notebook. It's been 2 days since we left that fortress. That fortress should be near Chrome Town. We're almost going to Ashilai City now, right? Leyland took a glass of water on the table, drank it in one gulp, breathed a sigh of relief, and started to put on his coat. According to the speed we are accelerating, it should be almost the same. She sat by the window on the other side and looked out. Ahem. There was another coughing sound from the carriage in front, as if the internal organs were about to be coughed out. Stop! Stop! A young man got out of the carriage in front. He was the totem master guarding Lara in the wild hunt. He looked ugly and waved quickly towards the carriage on Garen's side. The three carriages gradually slowed down and stopped. Galen opened the carriage door, got out of the carriage and walked towards the man. What's wrong? What happened? Lala just coughed up blood. We must find a way to help her, the man replied solemnly. I can't stand it anymore. She is just an ordinary person and should not be punished like this. I'll go take a look. Garen frowned. He followed the man into the first carriage and immediately saw a shocking pool of blood on the ground of the carriage. Lala lay on her side on the floor of the carriage, her face as white as paper. Garen's face darkened slightly and he glanced at the others. Angel shrugged at him, helpless. Vicky frowned in a low voice and said, "I have seen this disease in West Chelsea County. It seems to be Mia tuberculosis, which may be contagious." Suddenly, everyone else in the carriage looked unnatural. "I'll do it," Garen said calmly, then stepped forward and picked up Lala. "Turn around and walk towards the third carriage. Lala has lost a lot of weight, probably less than 80 pounds, and is so thin that she has lost her human shape." Garen took the time to look at her face. The cheeks were sunken, the eyes were dull, and only skin and bones were left. "There is no medicine, there is no specialized doctor. I'm sorry, it was me who hurt you," Galen said in a low voice, and placed her in the compartment of the third car, leaning against a wooden barrel containing dried meat. "This is my own choice." Lala's voice was very weak, and most people could only faintly hear it if they were close to their ears. "It's me. I want to follow you." Garen felt a little uncertain as he looked at this girl who had always taken good care of him. Without proper treatment, Lara will definitely die. I had unconsciously ignored her during this period, which caused her condition to deteriorate to this point. He reached out and felt the pulse of Lala's wrist. It was so weak that he could hardly feel the pulse. "There is a way to save you now, but I can't guarantee whether it will succeed. Everything depends on luck. It's just a possibility." Lala's eyes suddenly widened. "Can I survive?" "It's just that you need to pay the price for your freedom." Garen nodded in confirmation of her question. In fact, both of them knew that if it was really tuberculosis, it would almost be a death sentence. There was no hesitation in Lala's eyes. "Then it's up to you. I'm an ordinary person. In fact, in this world age, there is no freedom at all." She studied law and saw everything clearly. She understood that Garen was already very good to her. If it had been a different owner, she might have been eaten long ago. Galen admired her rationality and wisdom. Being able to be measured and know how to advance and retreat is the biggest advantage of this girl Lala. As for her beautiful appearance, it is only second. In this world, if you want to find beautiful vases, you can find them everywhere. But such beautiful and wise girls are rare. "Then you're ready." Garen looked back and looked outside at the Wild Hunt and the others. "You guys wait outside first, and I'll try to see if I can rescue Lala." Angel nodded at him, with a playful smile on his face. "Whatever you want, as long as your cute sister isn't jealous." Garen didn't bother to talk nonsense with her, so he directly closed the carriage door and closed the curtains. Looking at Lala, who was wearing a white nightgown, he knelt down. "Get some rest. You'll be fine when you wake up soon." Lala nodded slightly. "Please, Lord Garen." "Yeah." Garen struck out like lightning, instantly slashing the side of Lara's neck. Lala suddenly rolled her eyes and passed out. Without hesitation, Garen took out the red crystal ball from his underwear pocket and gently placed it next to Lala's head. The red crystal ball suddenly fluoresced slightly. A line of tiny text rippled above it. "We found nearby creatures. Are they silver creatures? This is an experiment. If it succeeds, you will survive. If it fails, you will be dead. It depends on your luck." Garen glanced at the text in the crystal ball, stretched out his hand gently, and clicked yes. Suddenly, the crystal ball glowed with silver light, turning from pink to white silver. A silver beam suddenly shot out from the center, landing directly on the temple on the right side of Lala's head. Hiss. Suddenly, a hint of white air appeared on Lala's head, which seemed to be water vapor. Garen stared nervously at the crystal deduction device. This experiment was related to the key to whether he could successfully silver the human body. Jessica disappeared after being transformed into silver, and there is no news now, but to a certain extent, it is confirmed that silver can indeed choose humans. Although this is somewhat inconsistent with his thoughts, it also has certain reference value. This is the last place, the 10th place controlled by the deducer. It depends on whether it can be successful. The silver beam lasted for more than 10 minutes before slowly becoming thinner and dimming. When the silver light completely disappeared, Garen quickly put away the crystal ball and began to check Lala's condition. Everything is normal, no different from before the silver transformation, even the body is as weak. Failed, Garen looked at the crystal ball, and it showed that the silvering was successful. He looked down the field of vision. If he succeeded, there would definitely be a totem display here. Sure enough, in the silver totem column, a strange icon clearly appeared. It was a three-dimensional face image of Lala's whole body. Lara person, the first form of living totem, which can be improved evolution success rate, 89%, the weaker the body, the higher the success rate, potential points consumed, 300%. Ability, housework, study. It actually formed a totem. Garen was a little shocked. He looked at Lala, who was lying down. The girl was opening her eyes slightly and looking at him in confusion. Garen thought. Lala, can you hear me? He directly conveyed the message mentally without speaking. Lala opened her mouth in confusion, but then she understood, with a shocked expression on her face. She looked at Garen, feeling as if she could decide life or death according to his mood, but the original feeling of weakness entangled by tuberculosis was completely gone. She felt her heart beating strong and powerful. There is no doubt that I am communicating with you through my thoughts. In a sense, you have now become my exclusive creature. Life and death are under my control, Garen explained carefully. Do you feel any different now? Lala nodded, hesitantly, but also just conveyed the thoughts in her heart. My illness seems to be cured. That's good. Garen nodded with satisfaction. The experiment is considered a success. You should get used to your body. It should be much safer than before. The biggest advantage of becoming a totem creature is that it is difficult to encounter damage from people outside of its own kind. Such as illness, accident, etc. Opening the door, Garen got out of the carriage and saw Leylan waiting outside with a gloomy expression. There was a hint of unwillingness and jealousy on her old and withered face. Brother, it seems that you don't want to listen to my advice. Her voice was gloomy. Do you know the consequences of not listening to me? Garen heard a strong threat in her words, and he narrowed his eyes. I don't remember what you said to me. Leylan sneered. Without saying any more, he just turned around and returned to the carriage. Garen looked at her back and felt for the first time that letting this person stay with him might have been a wrong choice. Although she taught herself a lot of knowledge that is not available to the outside world. Be careful, your sister looks a little weird. Angel came close to Garen and whispered. Before they finished speaking, the two of them saw Leylan, who was walking far ahead, suddenly turning his head and staring directly at Angel with penetrating eyes. Angel snorted coldly and led people towards the first carriage. Garen looked at Leylan and didn't know how to deal with it for a moment. He got on the carriage a little behind, but saw Leylan turning his back to him, covering himself with a quilt and sleeping. It wasn't until lunchtime that Leylan got up and ate something in a hurry before falling asleep again. Garen felt strange and put the matter behind him for the time being. When he encountered some problems that he didn't understand, he simply solved them himself. With his foundation, it is not difficult to study some knowledge points in depth if he has the basics. Until the evening, another group of more than 10 white cats were eliminated. Each of these white cats was as big as a horse and had very sharp claws. They were not totems. A man in black under Angel independently eliminated them and kept them all. Prepare to be roasted into jerky, and the skins can be used to make clothes. After dinner, Garen studied bioengineering for a while and then went to sleep. Suddenly he felt something was wrong. He was confused and felt a little uncomfortable. Garen struggled to open his eyes hazy, and saw Leyland standing upright next to him, looking down at him. Her eyes were fluorescent red, glowing in the dark. Leyland? What's wrong? Garen hadn't woken up yet and looked at Leyland standing next to him. Leyland said nothing, turned back to his seat, fell asleep again, and did not answer Galen's question at all. Garen rubbed his head and sat up. Suddenly, he felt something was wrong with his water glass. He took the water glass on the table, and a small black thing suddenly emerged from it, trying to fly out of the car window. Snapped. Garen pinched the little black thing. Expand it and take a look. It turned out to be a small black insect similar to a cockroach, less than the size of a fingernail. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 333. Suddenly he heard the crawling sound of insects. He looked down and saw a large number of these bugs crawling on his bed. They are so densely packed that they are almost countless in number. Some bugs were crawling up his arms, others were crawling on his legs, and others were trying to crawl up his chest and head. A large number of black bugs were like black slime, and a large area completely occupied the entire bed. There was a sickening rotten smell in the air. Damn it, the totem light all over Garen's body flashed, and all the insects were knocked down. He felt a little numb on the scalp and stood up hurriedly. Soon, the bugs on the seats disappeared like a tide, got under the car and disappeared quickly. Garen picked up the water glass and wanted to drink some water, but suddenly he remembered the little insect crawling out of it just now. He leaned over the rim of the cup and looked inside. There was a fat white maggot soaked in the water of the cup. The maggot had layers of wrinkles all over its body and curled up at the bottom of the cup. It was as thick as 2 fingers and was still bending and moving slightly. There are many white insect eggs floating on the surface of the water. Snapped. Galen threw the cup on the ground of the carriage. An unprecedented anger surged from his heart. Leyland. He pointed at the sleeping Leyland angrily. What's wrong? Brother Leyland turned over and looked at Garen calmly. The two looked at each other, with no intention of avoiding them. After a long while, he calmed down a little. Are you threatening me in your own way? Garen felt that this was the first time he recognized this picked-up woman from the Black Sky Society. In what way? I don't know what you are talking about. Brother Leyland showed a strange expression. Garen had a vague suspicion whether Lala's illness was caused by Leyland. After seeing these weird bugs tonight, he now doubts this possibility even more. What exactly do you want to do? Leyland gave an ugly smile. Brother, you like beautiful beauties, right? It's a pity that I am so disappointing to you. Right. She suppressed her smile, as if she was remembering something. Actually, I've known for a long time that you are not my biological brother. Garen's heart sank and he stopped talking, just waiting for her next words. I just want to continue to enjoy the feeling of being taken care of. Brother Leyland opened his eyes wide and his red eyes were bloodshot. Of course, it would be better if the little maid who is prettier than me dies. That's what I thought, so I just induced her a little bit. She paused. As you know, some diseases actually only need a slightly special environment to induce them. Sure enough, it's you. Garen calmed down at this time. Haha. Leyland smiled and suddenly stood up. Brother, it seems we have to separate. But this is only temporary. Smiling, her face suddenly melted, like a candle, and the dripping wax turned into countless tiny black flying insects. Soon, Leyland's entire body turned into a ball of black flying insects, buzzing out of the car window and flying towards the distant sky. The flying insects formed a black human figure in the sky, waving towards Garen from afar. Then they dispersed and disappeared completely. Garen looked gloomily and watched Leyland leave directly. He had no intention of taking action. Leyland was the person the Black Sky Society wanted to kill just like him, so there was no need to conflict with her. Just the matter of having sex completely eliminated the friendship between the two. As for what Leyland thinks, he doesn't know, and he doesn't want to know. It's good to leave. Garen snorted coldly, his platinum auras spreading all over his body, and he directly checked the situation of the 3 carriages on one side, and only slowly took it back after there was no longer any little bug. Like Jace, they are indeed extreme lunatics. Garen didn't feel any regret in his heart. Although Leyland may help him a lot, such a person may hurt the people around him at any time for his own selfish desires, which is an unstable factor. When there is no way to grasp the situation, staying away is the only best way. What's going on? Angel and others were awakened from the carriage and stood outside the carriage window with their coats on. It's okay, Leyland left. He had a quarrel with me. Garen forced a smile and whispered. Angel's face obviously relaxed a little. Leaving? I always feel that your sister is a little abnormal, so it's better to leave. You are quite upright. Garen smiled bitterly. We should be able to arrive at Asulai City tomorrow, so get some rest early. We have reserves of the striped crystals you want, as well as other rare crystals. Angel shook his head and turned away from the car window. Garen sensed his totem creatures. The 2-headed lizard dragon made a hole in the ground to sleep in the back. The resonant eagle is chasing a mutated white deer 700 meters to the left. The petrified white dragon was taking care of its scales in another cave. The Fukasawa giant crocodiles and beetles are scattered around, most of them dormant. Angel didn't seem surprised at all that Leyland left on his own. She has already seen that Leyland is not simple. Garen stopped thinking about it and lay down again, closing his eyes but unable to fall asleep. At noon the next day, an iron-gray hexagonal city finally appeared at the end of the plain ahead. A sewer city is like a 6-cent coin stuck on the ground, extremely neat and neat. There are 6 watchtowers built on the 6 sides. Garen stuck his head out of the car window and looked at the city in front of him. The watchtower by the roadside has collapsed. Like a broken pencil, snapped in the middle. Half of it hit the middle of the road, blocking the carriage's path. There are still some broken fragments of carriage wheels on the right side of the road, and some blood stains remain on the ground, which has turned completely black. A few red-eyed mice were crawling around in the grass. As soon as Garen's carriage arrived, these little guys were frightened and fled in all directions. Izur City is an industrial city rich in mineral resources. It is also one of the 2 headquarters of the Southern War Guild. I wonder if anyone in the guild survives. Angel and Garen were in a carriage, sitting leisurely across from each other. Said. Maybe, maybe not, but what does it have to do with us? Garen smiled. In this environment, except for the resources needed for survival, the rest are not expensive. That's right, Angel smiled. Get out of the car first, the road ahead is blocked. She opened the car door first and jumped out. Garen followed closely behind. The 2 of them walked towards the watchtower blocking the road ahead. It was quiet all around, and a few mice crawled quickly under the tower. Make a rustling sound. The grey road was covered with green weeds, and the collapsed watchtower was covered with dark green vines. The bright light during the day dimly illuminates the inside of the tower. The entire tower is 5 or 6 meters in diameter, blocking the road and blocking all carriages moving forward. Garen walked to the tower and looked forward. In front of him was the city gate facing him. The city gate was open, and there was a row of shabby little bungalows on the left, which seemed to be used by vendors. The air was quiet and there was no smell of blood. It's so quiet. Angel stood beside Garen and frowned in a low voice. It's just too quiet. Garen nodded. You can't even see a single monster. Garen sensed that the beetles he sent did not encounter any monsters. It feels even more strange. Let's go in and take a look first. Garen jumped over the tower and landed on the ground on the other side. If you want to find striped crystals, I suggest you go directly to the warehouse of the governor's mansion. There should be more there, Angel said loudly. No need, Just go to the museum your group member mentioned last time. Garen raised his head and looked at the resonance eagle flying and circling above him. A huge grey eagle overlooks the city. Garen quickly carved a spell symbol on his hand. My vision went dark for a moment, then quickly became clear. He was in the cold high altitude, overlooking the entire city of Asuli. The interior of this hexagonal city is like a mess of gravels of various colors, mixed together and stirred. Most of the buildings collapsed. In some places there was a continuous mass of charred debris, where fire had clearly broken out. There are still some places that are intact, with a high protective wall built and supported by heavy metal barrels. They are obviously human strongholds. But there was no movement either. What are the characteristics of the museum? Galen asked directly. The 8 pillars are all black, and there is a triangular fountain at the door. There are 4 brass statues around it, all of them are statues of Federer. The roof is rectangular, very long, equivalent to a street. Vicky next to Angel was now go out and describe it carefully. I still remember there were flower beds and stone paths built all around, right next to the memorial square. Very good. Garen quickly locked onto the target. We go there directly, enter through the city gate, cross 3 straight streets, turn right, cross an arch bridge, then turn left and cross 2 streets, there is the museum. It's a bit far. The streets in Ishili city are very long, Vicky whispered. It doesn't matter. We will get the things and leave directly after the supplies are completed. Whatever you need, make a list and give it to me, Garen said simply. The list has been made a long time ago, here it is. Vicky handed over a piece of white paper filled with various materials and supplies. Garen took it and glanced at it, frowning slightly. It's a bit complicated. There are actually books on this history. The library is on the other side of the city. Called a jam. Now is not the time to enjoy it. There are so many rare metals. Then let's split up. It seems there aren't many monsters here anymore, Angel shrugged. He handed over a black wooden stick, only as long as a palm. This is a warning smoke. If you encounter trouble, just send the signal and we will all come to support. Garen took the cigarette. Is it for lighting? Just rub it quickly on rough ground. Okay. But don't rush now. Wait until you are completely sure that there are no monsters before we split up.